Mutation. It is the key to our evolution. It has enabled us to evolve from a single-celled organism into the dominant species on the planet. The process is slow and normally takes thousands and thousands of years, but every few hundred millennia, evolution leaps forward, and every 14 or so years, the X-Men movie franchise is rebooted. As far as we know, there are at least 3 distinct timelines in the X-Men franchise, with one of those timelines outright replacing another. And while the revised timeline does begin as far back as ancient Egypt, we know that in these realities, powerful forces known as anchor beings can retroactively reach back through time and affect changes within a timeline. So we're going to assume time travel has a similar retroactive effect within this franchise, and that those events in Egypt don't occur until the revised timeline takes hold after X-Men Days of Future Past. The history of the first X-Men timeline begins in 1845 in the Northwest Territories of Canada, when a young boy named James Howlett discovers his mutant abilities in the form of bone claws protruding from the backs of his hands. After the traumatic ordeal of seeing his father John Howlett shot to death by their family's groundskeeper, a man named Thomas Logan, James then kills Logan, but not before the groundskeeper tells the boy he's his biological father. Logan's other son, a boy named Victor, chases after a traumatized James, reveals to him that he's his half-brother, and that he'll protect him as they escape into the woods together. They would grow up together and go on to fight in the American Civil War, as well as World War I, and finally at the invasion of Normandy during World War II. At the concentration camp in Auschwitz, Poland, in 1944, a young man named Erik Lenscher is separated from his parents. During this traumatic event, he discovers his mutant ability to control metal and Earth's magnetic fields by bending a massive metal gate until he's knocked unconscious by a Nazi guard. In Westchester, New York, a 12-year-old Charles Xavier wakes up one night in his family's large mansion to discover a shape-shifting mutant named Raven Darkholme in his kitchen stealing food. She ran away after her family tried to kill her. Charles reveals he's also a mutant with telepathic abilities, and that Raven would no longer need to steal to survive, as Charles would protect her. They grew up together as siblings. A Nazi scientist named Schmidt observes Erik display his abilities from his office and has Lenscher brought to him. Schmidt demands the mutant use his power again on a small metal coin, but the young man is unable. Schmidt then brings in Erik's mother and shoots her, purposefully reactivating the trauma needed for Lenscher to access his abilities. The young mutant kills 2 Nazi guards in the ensuing display of his powers. In 1945, James Howlett is captured by the Japanese Imperial Army and placed in a well as a prisoner in Nagasaki before the atomic bomb is dropped by the United States. As the blast is incoming, Howlett manages to rescue a young Japanese soldier named Ichiro Yoshida and protects him in the well. They would emerge after Yoshida attempted to gift Howlett his samurai sword, but James asked him to hold on to it for him. In 1949, Erik Lenscher sees the Statue of Liberty for the first time. In 1953, Ichiro Yoshida establishes the Yoshida Corporation, which would go on to become one of the biggest tech companies in Japan and the world. They would eventually specialize in genetic mutation after Ichiro Yoshida's encounter with James Howlett at the end of the war. In 1956, Erik Lenscher has a relationship with a woman, but leaves before she gives birth to a son named Peter Maximoff. In 1962, in Geneva, Switzerland, an adult Erik Lenscher hunts down Nazis with information from a banker, leading him to a bar in Villa Gesell, Argentina, where he kills 3 Nazis. Lenscher is looking for Nazi scientist Schmidt. At Oxford University in England, adult Charles Xavier is an expert on mutation and living with his sister Raven, who's ashamed of hiding who she is. In Las Vegas, Nevada, a young American CIA operative, Moira McTaggart, discovers the existence of mutants when she learns they're members in the high society Hellfire Club, which includes Schmidt, now going by Sebastian Shaw, the telepathic diamond-skinned Emma Frost, and a teleporting red-skinned mutant named Azazel. Later in Miami, Florida, Shaw reveals himself as a mutant with the ability to absorb energy and keep himself young to a high-ranking United States colonel who Shaw manipulated to ramp up the potential for nuclear war. Shaw then kills the colonel. McTaggart believes Shaw means to initiate nuclear war, so she recruits Professor of Genetics Charles Xavier, and he and Raven are taken to the CIA in Langley, Virginia, to convince the agency that mutants exist. Raven takes the form of William Stryker Sr. to convince them. They track down Shaw, who is also being hunted by Erik Lenscher, and Shaw escapes while Xavier saves Lenscher from drowning. Erik joins Charles and Raven at their covert CIA research base, where Charles accidentally outs young genius Hank McCoy as a mutant himself, with large ape-like feet and enhanced agility. The team uses a prototype Cerebro to begin recruiting mutants to their cause, including insect-winged Angel, adaptable Darwin, plasma blast-generating Alex Summers, and sonic wave-emitting Sean Cassidy. Charles and Erik also find James Howlett in a bar, where he tells them to, politely, go f*** yourself. It'll be years before their paths cross again. Back at the covert CIA base, the young mutants choose codenames. Raven picks Mystique, Darwin sticks with his nickname Darwin, Cassidy chooses the name Banshee, and Angel uses her stage name Angel. Before Charles and Erik can accompany Moira on a mission, they witness the young mutants partying. Raven announces Alex's name should be Havoc, Charles should be Professor X, and Erik should go by Magneto. Xavier and Lenscher then leave to intercept Shaw, but only encounter his envoy, Emma Frost, as she goes to meet with a Russian general. Erik almost kills Frost before she reveals Shaw's location. Meanwhile, Sebastian Shaw attacks the CIA base, seemingly killing Darwin and recruiting Angel to his side. It is still unknown if Darwin actually died, or if he survived and was able to come back in another form. When Xavier and Lensher return, they begin training the young mutants back at the safety of Xavier's mansion. Hank McCoy, insecure about his physical mutation, takes a sample of Raven's blood that she provides willingly and creates a serum designed to hide a mutant's physical differences. Raven refuses to take the serum, taking on a phrase spoken by a woman in a bar in England, "mutant and proud." When Hank takes the serum, it activates a secondary mutation of blue fur and animal-like teeth and claws, and he goes by the name Alex Summers chooses for him, Beast. The team suit up and take the supersonic jet designed by Hank to try and stop Shaw from initiating a nuclear war between Russia and the United States off the coast of Cuba. Xavier uses his abilities to stop a Russian ship from crossing a line, but cannot access Sebastian Shaw directly, as Shaw is wearing a telepathy-proof helmet made for him by the Russians. When Lensher finally finds Shaw and removes the helmet, Xavier is able to take control of Shaw, but Erik reveals the same metal coin he was forced to move as Shaw killed his mother, and drives it through Sebastian Shaw's brain, killing him while Charles experiences it telepathically. Both the US and Russian fleets of fearful, bigoted humans decide to fire their missiles at the assembled mutants on the Cuban beach, but Lensher is able to deflect all of the projectiles. Xavier realizes how dangerous Lensher is as he turns the missiles back on the humans, and Moira tries to shoot Lensher with her gun, but Lensher deflects the bullets until one hits Charles in the back of his spine, paralyzing him. Lensher almost kills McTaggart until Xavier stops him, and he leaves with Shaw's former allies, as well as Mystique. A month later, Charles is in a wheelchair and plans to turn his home into a school for mutants. Moira dubs his team the X-Men, and Charles erases some of Moira's memories to prevent her from revealing the school's location. Lensher breaks Emma Frost out of CIA headquarters and tells her to call him Magneto. At some point, Mystique gives birth to a child from Father Azazel. She gives the baby up for adoption. At some point after this, Emma Frost, Angel, Azazel, and Banshee are killed by operatives from Project Wide Awake. In November of 1963, Magneto is present during the apparent assassination of United States President John F. Kennedy. Lensher's curved bullet was trying to stop the actual assassin, and really save the president, who was a hidden mutant. A young William Stryker Jr. and his wife take their young mutant son Jason to receive help at Xavier's school. Jason has the ability to project illusions in people's minds and make them do anything he wants. After Xavier tells Stryker that he can't cure his son, he withdraws Jason from the school. Over the next year, Jason becomes more and more angry with his parents, torturing them with disturbing images until his mother commits suicide. At some point before 1973, James Howlett begins to go by his biological father's last name, Logan, and he and his brother Victor Creed fight in the Vietnam War, with Creed engaging in especially horrific actions. Victor murders a superior officer after he stopped from killing a Vietnamese girl, and he and Logan are sentenced to death by firing squad. Their healing factors ensure they survive. Major William Stryker recruits the two mutants for his special ops team, which includes the super strong Fred Dukes, teleporting John Wraith, super marksman Agent Zero, and chatty mutant swordsman Wade Wilson. The team is sent to Lagos, Nigeria to invade a diamond mining operation and find a unique meteorite. Later, they brutally interrogate and murder innocent people from the village the meteorite comes from, and Logan throws away his dog tags and abandons the team in disgust. In 1973, Howlett is staying in a hotel room in Times Square, New York. In Saigon, Mystique rescues mutants including Toad and Alex Summers from being taken and experimented on by Trask Industries. Alex prevents Raven from killing William Stryker, who is helping transport mutants to Trask. Hank McCoy is staying with Charles Xavier in the school that was shut down due to students being recruited to the Vietnam War years earlier. Xavier has turned to alcohol and uses a serum developed by McCoy that inhibits his telepathy but allows him to walk. Peter Maximoff, a super-fast thief, is living with his family. Magneto is in custody underneath the Pentagon. Mystique learns that Sentinel designer Bolivar Trask has been experimenting on mutants captured from his Project Wide Awake. Trask attends the Paris Peace Accords, and Mystique impersonates a Vietnamese general to get close to him. Mystique assassinates Trask the first time she kills. She's then captured and experimented on, her torture leading to more advanced Sentinels being built decades from now. At some point, Stryker places his son Jason in cryogenic stasis and stores him in his island laboratory. In 1979, Logan is living quietly as a lumberjack in the Canadian Rockies with his girlfriend Kayla, who is also a mutant with the ability to influence people by touch. Stryker finds Logan and warns him someone's hunting down members of their old Black Ops team. Kayla is then seemingly murdered by Victor. Logan finds his brother for revenge, but cannot defeat him. Stryker asks Logan to join him, promising a way for him to overpower his murderous brother, and Logan agrees. At an underground military facility at Alkali Lake, Logan asks for his new dog tags to say Wolverine, based on a story Kayla told him. Logan then undergoes a procedure that bonds an indestructible new metal, adamantium, developed from the unique meteorite from Nigeria to his skeleton, giving him the codename Weapon X. Afterwards, Stryker intends to erase Logan's memory, but Logan escapes. An elderly couple, the Hudsons, take Logan in and feed him. They give him their deceased son's jacket, right before Agent Zero tracks Logan down and murders the Hudsons. In revenge, Wolverine kills Zero. Logan heads to Las Vegas to see John Wraith, hoping to learn the location of Stryker's island laboratory, and finds Fred Dukes, who has gained weight and despises being called Blob. Dukes tells Logan that his brother Victor is actually working for Stryker, and that they all helped him capture mutants to experiment on. At the same time, Creed helps Stryker capture a young mutant, Alex Summers' much younger brother Scott, who has the ability to shoot powerful red force from his eyes. Dukes knows about a mutant who escaped Stryker's island lab, Remy LeBeau, and Wolverine and Wraith track down LeBeau, who goes by Gambit, in New Orleans. Gambit uses his ability to expel kinetic energy to try and escape from Wolverine, but they get caught up in a fight with Creed, who has just killed John Wraith and taken a sample of his blood to return to Stryker. Victor escapes, and Logan forces Gambit to take him to the island. Logan arrives at 3 Mile Island and confronts William Stryker. He learns Kayla's still alive and that she faked her death to manipulate Logan into working with Stryker again. Kayla's mutant sister Emma, with the ability to form her skin into Diamond, who could possibly be related to the deceased Emma Frost, is being held hostage by Stryker. Logan is betrayed and attempts to leave, but Victor tries to actually kill Kayla for real. Logan returns and fights his brother, then works with Kayla to free the imprisoned mutants still on the island, including her sister Emma and the young Scott Summers. Stryker then activates Weapon 11, a mind-controlled dead body of Wade Wilson, acting as a pool of various other mutants' abilities. This Deadpool has had his mouth sewn shut. Weapon 11 prevents Logan and the imprisoned mutants from escaping. Wolverine takes him on in a fight, allowing the mutants to run. A blindfolded Scott Summers guides the rest of the mutants through the facility's tunnels until he emerges thanks to the telepathic help from Charles Xavier, who walks out of a nearby helicopter, possibly by mentally projecting a version of himself that is able to walk, as he was paralyzed in 1962 and the serum the Beast developed would have removed his telepathy. Wolverine fights Weapon 11 on top of the cooling towers of the facility until Victor Creed reappears to help him. Together they defeat Weapon 11, decapitating him, and Creed escapes. Before the collapsed structure can kill him, Gambit saves Wolverine. Logan tells Remy to help the escaping mutants while he searches for Kayla, who is mortally wounded. As Logan is carrying her away, Stryker shoots Wolverine with an adamantium bullet and knocks him unconscious. Before she succumbs to her injuries, Kayla uses her mutant ability to convince Stryker to walk until his feet bleed. Wolverine then wakes up to find Gambit ensuring him the mutants are safe, but it means nothing to him because Logan gains severe memory loss from the bullet impacting his skull. Wolverine sees Kayla's body and doesn't recognize her. Logan and Gambit part ways, and soon Stryker is arrested by military police. In the rubble of the facility, Weapon 11's body finds his head and opens his eyes. At some point after this, Stryker unfreezes his son, lobotomizes him, and creates a compound from the spinal fluid in Jason's brain that allows Stryker to mind-control mutants more efficiently. Victor Creed somehow undergoes a secondary mutation, giving him a bigger, more bestial appearance and begins going by the name Sabretooth. Around 1986, Charles Xavier and Erik Lehnsherr visit the young Jean Grey. Charles was also again possibly mentally projecting a version of himself that is able to walk. Around this time, Lehnsherr could have helped Xavier build the current version of Cerebro, as they were on friendly terms. It's also possible that Lehnsherr would go on to upgrade his helmet. Charles begins helping Jean control her abilities by creating a series of psychic barriers to isolate her powers from her conscious mind, and she develops 2 personas. The Jean Grey persona, who is always in control of her powers, and a dormant side that comes to call itself Phoenix in sessions with Charles that would give in to emotions like desire and rage, and who is extremely powerful. Around 1996, Warren Worthington II is horrified at discovering his only son is a mutant, whose abilities are manifesting as small feathered wings protruding from his son's back. At some point, the existence of mutants becomes public knowledge, and Charles Xavier renovates and expands the mansion. In the not-too-distant future from the year 2000, a young mutant named Marie living in Meridian, Mississippi, discovers her mutant power and accidentally absorbs a boy's energy when she kisses him for the first time, putting him into a coma for 3 weeks. Senator Robert Kelly tries to pass a Mutant Registration Act. Dr. Jean Grey urges against it. Both Charles Xavier and Erik Lehnsherr are in attendance. Marie runs away to Laughlin City in Alberta, Canada, where she encounters cage fighter Wolverine, then witnesses him defending himself with metal claws. Marie, now going by Rogue, hides away in Wolverine's trailer and is discovered by him. She introduces herself and learns his name is Logan, before they're attacked by Sabretooth. Scott Summers, using his codename Cyclops, and Aurora Monroe, using the codename Storm, arrive and rescue Logan and Rogue, and bring them back to Westchester. Logan wakes up in an advanced underground base and attacks Jean Grey. After witnessing a young girl named Kitty phase through a wall, Logan meets Charles Xavier, who tells him about their secret school for mutants. In a class with a young mutant who can control fire, a boy named Bobby, who can generate ice, introduces himself to Rogue. Xavier erroneously tells Logan that he met Erik Lehnsherr when he was 17 years old, possibly to emphasize how long he's known him. Charles warns Logan about Magneto, whom he believes is after Logan, and Charles also omits that he grew up alongside Magneto's ally Mystique, possibly due to him still being hurt by her actions. Meanwhile, Senator Kelly is abducted by Mystique and Toad and brought back to the island base of the Brotherhood of Mutants. There, Magneto experiments on the Senator, turning him into a mutant with the apparent ability to turn his body into water, which he uses to escape. While staying at the mansion, Rogue is woken up by Logan's nightmares, and he accidentally stabs her through the chest. She absorbs his abilities to heal, and Logan is rendered unconscious. The next day, Bobby Drake, actually Mystique in disguise, convinces Rogue to run away. Xavier uses Cerebro to find Rogue, and Logan goes after her. Mystique later infiltrates Cerebro and sabotages it. Logan finds Rogue and convinces her to return to the school, but then Magneto and his Brotherhood arrive to overpower Wolverine and kidnap Rogue. Robert Kelly arrives at the mansion and asks to see Jean Grey before his mutation becomes unstable, and he apparently breaks down into water. Before Kelly dissolved, Charles learns from him that Magneto intends to transfer his abilities to Rogue so she can power his machine so that he won't be weakened by it. Xavier tries to use Cerebro to locate Rogue again, but is affected by the sabotage from Mystique and falls into a coma. Jean Grey repairs Cerebro and uses it herself to find the Brotherhood setting up their machine inside the Statue of Liberty so they can affect nearby leaders gathered in a United Nations World Summit. The X-Men, including a suited-up Wolverine, arrive at Ellis Island and Storm apparently kills Toad. Wolverine stabs Mystique after he uses his mutant senses to detect her when she was disguised as Storm. The X-Men are still captured and incapacitated by Magneto's mastery of metal, and the Brotherhood continues with their plan. Wolverine pops his claws through his own chest to escape, and helps Jean use Scott's optic blast to send Sabretooth flying out of the statue. Storm and Jean then send Wolverine up to save Rogue, who has gained white streaks in her hair due to being drained using the machine, while Cyclops blasts Magneto from interfering. The X-Men are hit with the machine's effects, and Jean may have some of her vast power associated with her Phoenix persona unlocked. Logan destroys the machine and transfers his healing factor to an unconscious Rogue, who recovers. Later, Xavier wakes from his coma, the team learns that Mystique survived and is now impersonating Senator Kelly, and Charles helps Wolverine learn more about his past by sending him to Alkali Lake. Logan promises Rogue he will return after he steals Scott's motorcycle. Charles visits Erik in a plastic prison, where they play chess. Before Logan makes it to Alkali Lake, the adult child of Mystique and Azazel, a blue-skinned teleporting mutant named Kurt Wagner, attempts to assassinate the President of the United States while inside the Oval Office. He's shot and teleports away, leaving behind a knife with the message "Mutant Freedom Now" on it. Logan reaches Alkali Lake but finds only the ruins of a base. The mutant students and teachers go on a school field trip to a museum, and Jean Grey experiences her abilities are heightened. Rogue, Bobby, and John, the young fire-controlling mutant, get into an altercation with human bullies, and Bobby uses his powers to save them. Professor Xavier mentally freezes every human present in the museum, and they leave. An older Colonel William Stryker gets approval from the president to attack Xavier's school for gifted youngsters after learning the location from the imprisoned Magneto by using a mind-controlling chemical administered on the back of his neck. Senator Kelly, actually Mystique in disguise, tries to dissuade Stryker from going forward with the attack, but she fails. Logan returns to the school and asks Xavier for more help in remembering his past. He also agrees to watch over the children as the X-Men attempt to find the president's assassin, and Cyclops and Professor Xavier leave to visit Magneto in prison. Mystique, meanwhile, breaks into Stryker's office and obtains information from his computer. She avoids detection from Stryker's deadly ally, Yuriko. Storm and Jean Grey find Wagner, who goes by his acrobatic stage name, Nightcrawler, and he returns with the X-Men. Cyclops and Xavier are captured after learning Erik Lehnsherr unwillingly gave up secrets about Xavier's school. Logan wakes up from a nightmare and has a conversation with Rogue's boyfriend, Bobby, who is also awake. Stryker's forces invade the school, and a young red-headed girl with a sonic scream, possibly related to Sean Cassidy, wakes everyone in the mansion up. Many students escape thanks to Wolverine fighting off the mercenaries, and with the help of a strong, metal-skinned student, Wolverine confronts William Stryker, who still recognizes him, but whom Wolverine does not. Rogue, Bobby, and John get Logan to accompany them, and, taking Cyclops' car, travel to Boston to try and contact Storm and Jean. Mystique finds Magneto's prison guard at a bar, where on TV, Hank McCoy participates in a televised political debate show, either with the assistance of an image inducer or by temporarily reducing his secondary, furry mutation. Mystique drugs the guard and injects him with iron. Charles Xavier wakes up in Stryker's captivity and learns about his plans. Logan and the kids meet Bobby Drake's family, and he comes out to them as a mutant. Magneto senses his guard has too much iron in his blood and uses it to escape. Bobby's bigoted younger brother calls the police, and they arrive and shoot Wolverine in the head, knocking him out. Before John can use his fire-controlling powers to kill the officers, Rogue absorbs enough of his life force to stop him. Storm and Jean pack them all up in the X-Jet after Wolverine comes to. During their escape, 2 Air Force jets engage the X-Men in the air, and Storm uses her powers to outmaneuver them. One jet fires 2 missiles, and Jean Grey uses her telekinetic power, tapping into her Phoenix persona, to dismantle one of the projectiles. One still hits and damages the aircraft, sending Rogue flying out into the sky. Nightcrawler teleports out of the X-Jet to save her, and then teleports back inside, saving her life. As the X-Jet is about to crash into the ground, it's caught in midair by Magneto. Magneto and Mystique bring the X-Men up to speed on William Stryker's plans. Jean reads Nightcrawler's mind and learns Stryker's base is underground at Alkali Lake. Kurt admires Mystique's bravery, not knowing he's her biological son. Magneto teases Rogue and her white hair streaks, and befriends John, who says his real name is Pyro. At the base, Stryker orders Jason to manipulate Xavier into using their duplicate version of Cerebro to find all the mutants, when in reality, Stryker intends to use their machine to kill all the mutants. The United X-Men attack the base by first sending in Mystique disguised as Wolverine, which Stryker sees through. She still overpowers the guards, however, and makes it to the control room to let the rest of the X-Men inside. Jean Grey takes on a brainwashed Cyclops, eventually overpowering him with her Phoenix power, and Scott regains his senses. Wolverine finds the room where the adamantium was bonded to his skeleton and is forced to fight Stryker's bodyguard, the brainwashed Yuriko. After an intense fight, Wolverine manages to kill Yuriko. Pyro leaves the X-Jet for the facility. Magneto makes his way to the facility's Cerebro, where Charles begins to connect with and inadvertently kill every mutant on the planet. Magneto's helmet protects him from the assault, and he enters to reprogram the machine. Then Mystique enters as a disguised William Stryker to tell his son there's been a change of plans and that Charles should instead connect with and kill every human being on the planet. Wolverine confronts the real Stryker outside and impales him with his claws, demanding answers about his past. Stryker reveals that Logan volunteered for the procedure and says that he'll only ever be an animal. Logan then goes back to rescue the mutant children. Magneto and Mystique find Stryker and steal his helicopter after Pyro joins them. Rogue saves everyone when she flies the X-Jet by herself and brings it to where Logan thought Stryker's helicopter was. As Xavier begins his assault on humankind, Nightcrawler and Storm get inside Cerebro and stop Jason from controlling Charles. They rescue Xavier and the dam begins to collapse. Wolverine bids farewell to a chained-up Stryker, throwing his dog tags on the ground. A malfunctioning X-Jet puts the team and children in danger as the dam breaks and kills William Stryker. Jean exits the aircraft and uses her heightened power to prevent the team from rescuing her as she lifts the X-Jet and simultaneously holds back the oncoming waves of water. As soon as the X-Men are safe, Jean is overwhelmed by the water and dies. Scott Summers mourns Jean, as does Logan, who had feelings for her. The X-Men then infiltrate the White House as the president is giving a speech about the threat of mutants. Professor Xavier freezes everyone in the room except for the president, and the team delivers files proving William Stryker fabricated his assassination attempt, and that mutants helped stop his ultimate plan. Xavier leaves it up to the president to move forward. A fiery bird shape is seen at Alkali Lake. In the not-too-distant future from the year 2006, a team of X-Men in training consisting of Iceman, Colossus, Kitty, and Rogue are participating in a Danger Room session led by Storm and Wolverine. Scott Summers takes a leave of absence from the team, as he's still mourning the loss of Jean Grey. An older Hank McCoy is now the Secretary of the Department of Mutant Affairs, and he learns from Department of Homeland Security Trask, who may be related to Boulevard Trask, who was assassinated decades earlier, that Mystique has been captured and a mutant cure has been developed. Beast heads to Xavier's school to tell the team and students that a cure is going to be made available, with some students, like Rogue, hoping to receive it. Magneto, meanwhile, believes the cure will be used to exterminate all mutants. He recruits a group of mutant outcasts to begin building an army to retaliate. Beast travels to Worthington Labs on Alcatraz Island to meet the source of the cure, a mutant boy named Jimmy, aka Leech, who can nullify the powers of any mutant within his close proximity. Cyclops travels to Alkali Lake and sees that Jean Grey is still alive, before she destroys him without realizing what she's done. Xavier senses this and sends the X-Men to Alkali Lake, where Storm and Wolverine find an unconscious Jean and bring her back to the mansion. Charles confirms Jean could have become more powerful due to the Phoenix persona within her, and that she most likely survived the previous events at the lake by enveloping herself in a cocoon of telekinetic energy. At Worthington Labs, Warren Worthington III arrives to receive the mutant cure, but changes his mind and escapes. Magneto frees a captive Mystique from a prison convoy along with mutants James Madrox, the Multiple Man, and the unstoppable Juggernaut, but abandons Mystique when she is shot with the cure and made human. Hank McCoy resigns from his position when he learns the US government is using the cure as a weapon against mutants. Jean Grey wakes up, not in control of her personas. Logan asks her what happened to Scott, and she escapes to her childhood home. Magneto learns of Jean's resurrection and escape, and plans to recruit her to his cause, so he meets her and the X-Men at her home. Phoenix disintegrates Charles Xavier, and Magneto takes her away. The X-Men and students mourn their leader. Bobby Drake takes Kitty ice skating, and this leads Rogue to believe he wants a physical relationship, so she leaves to receive the mutant cure. Warren Worthington III arrives at the mansion, leading Storm to decide the school will remain open. Wolverine is led to Magneto's army by Phoenix telepathically communicating with him, where he learns they plan to attack Alcatraz Island and destroy the source of the cure. The government learns of the Brotherhood's location from a betrayed Mystique, but they're too late to stop the mutants and only encounter Madrox left behind as a decoy. The next morning, the X-Men decide to take a stand against Magneto, so Storm and Wolverine recruit former X-Man Beast, as well as new team members Iceman, Kitty, and Colossus. Magneto moves the Golden Gate Bridge across the San Francisco Bay to transport his army of mutants to Alcatraz Island. The X-Men arrive to help US soldiers fight the Brotherhood off. Juggernaut is sent in to kill the boy, but is stopped by Kitty and Jimmy himself. Magneto's followers try to murder Warren Worthington II, but he's saved by his angelic son. Iceman overpowers Pyro, and the Brotherhood is finally defeated when Beast reluctantly injects Magneto with the mutant cure. Phoenix continues to attack, killing human soldiers and mutants alike. As everyone present runs to escape her vicinity, Wolverine approaches, trying to reach through to Jean, and surviving due to his healing factor. In a brief moment of clarity, Jean asks Logan to kill her, and he does after declaring his love for her. After the dust is settled, Rogue returns to the mansion, having taken the mutant cure, excited to continue her relationship with Bobby. Jimmy becomes a student at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Beast becomes a mutant ambassador to the United Nations. The Golden Gate Bridge is being repaired as Warren Worthington III flies by. A depowered Erik Lenscher is playing chess in the park, and a metal piece seems to move slightly under his control. In Scotland, a friend of Charles Xavier named Dr. Moira McTaggart, who is possibly related to the American CIA operative that Charles knew decades before, discovers that Xavier's consciousness found its way into a vegetative body and speaks to her using Charles's voice. In 2013, 6 years after killing Jean Grey and leaving the X-Men, Logan lives alone in the Canadian woods. When he witnesses thoughtless hunters put a bear through unnecessary pain, he tracks the survivor of the hunting party to a bar where he stabs him through the hand with his own illegally poisoned arrow. There, a young Japanese mutant named Yukio, who can see when people will die, also helps Logan fight off attackers and convinces him to come with her back to Tokyo. Yukio was sent by an older Ichiro Yoshida, who was saved by James Howlett during World War II, and who wants to return the favor by giving a way for the immortal Logan to finally die. Yoshida also wants to remove Logan's healing factor and give it to himself, and Logan refuses. Yoshida's granddaughter, Mariko, learns some distressing news and attempts to throw herself to her death, but Logan saves her. Later that night, Logan dreams of Jean Grey and is injected with a robotic parasite that begins to nullify his healing factor by Yoshida's personal oncologist, the mutant who goes by the name Viper. Also that night, Ichiro Yoshida passes away. During Yoshida's funeral the next day, Mariko is attacked by Yakuza assassins, but is saved thanks to Logan and Kenichiro Harada, a skilled archer and Mariko's former fiancé. Logan realizes his healing factor isn't working as well as it should, but manages to get Mariko to safety after an encounter with more Yakuza on a bullet train. Logan passes out from his injuries while staying at a love hotel, and wakes up with Mariko, having found a veterinarian to help him. Harada, meanwhile, meets with Viper, who's furious that he hasn't found Logan and Mariko. Mariko takes Logan to a family home in the south of Japan, Nagasaki, where they begin to develop feelings for one another. Yukio has a vision of Wolverine dying with his heart in his hands, and finds him to warn him, while Mariko is kidnapped by Yakuza members. Logan and Yukio go to question Mariko's current fiancé, the corrupt Chief of Justice, Nobuto Mori, who reveals that Mariko's father, Shingen, planned the kidnapping. When Mariko is taken to her father, she reveals that her grandfather planned to leave his company to her, and that leads Shingen to declare he's going to kill his daughter so he can inherit the company. Harada arrives with his personal ninja clan, and Viper poisons Shingen before he can murder his daughter. Viper and Harada then take Mariko away. Logan and Yukio arrive, looking for Mariko, but Logan uses the Yashida machinery to find the robotic parasite inside of his body. He begins to extract it, dying in the process, as a poisoned Shingen appears for Yukio to fight him off. Logan technically dies, removing the parasite, but his healing factor kicks back in and the Wolverine returns to murder Shingen. Wolverine and Yukio head to the Yashida Research Center where Mariko was taken, but Logan is captured by Harada and the Black Clan. He's hooked up to a machine that will extract his healing factor, killing him, but Mariko is able to escape and tricks the Silver Samurai, a man in a powerful adamantium armored suit, into helping Wolverine escape. Harada is then killed by the samurai and his adamantium sword. Yukio arrives and kills Viper. The samurai uses his sword to cut off Wolverine's metal claws and siphons his healing factor, revealing himself to be a still-alive Ichiro Yoshida, growing younger by the second. His granddaughter, Mariko, stabs him, and Wolverine's bone claws begin to grow back. Logan throws Ichiro Yoshida to his death and has one last vision of Jean Grey. Mariko, the new CEO of Yashida Corporation, bids farewell to Logan. They kiss, and Logan boards a plane with his bodyguard, Yukio, who declares they can go wherever they want. 2 years later, Wolverine is at an airport, witnessing an advertisement for Trask Industries, a leading robotics company, when he's confronted with a Magneto whose powers have been fully restored, asking for his help. When Logan refuses, the people in the airport are mentally frozen as Professor X appears in a body that has somehow been restored to look like his own, and informs Logan that he and Magneto are working together. At some point, Wolverine regains the adamantium over his bone claws, possibly from assistance by his new ally and the Master of Magnetism, Magneto. Kitty Pryde also gains a new ability, perhaps from a secondary mutation, or from accessing new levels of her existing ones, to be able to shift people's consciousness back through time. Many events take place from now until 2023 that lead the world into chaos and mutants being hunted down and killed, including Hank McCoy. The design and construction of advanced shape-shifting sentinels using information extracted from Mystique's DNA begin. In a dystopian 2023, in Moscow, a team of X-Men, including Iceman, Colossus, Warpath, Sunspot, and Blink, are cornered by Sentinels and seemingly killed, while Kitty Pryde uses her shifting abilities to send the consciousness of her fellow X-Man, Bishop, back in time a few days so that he can warn them all. Avoiding the Sentinel attack, the X-Men travel to China to meet Storm, Magneto, Professor X, and Wolverine, where Xavier reveals his plan to have Kitty send his consciousness back to 1973 so he can prevent Mystique from assassinating Boulevard Trask and change their present. Kitty Pryde states that the strain on Charles's consciousness, traveling that far back, would kill him. Wolverine volunteers to go back instead, as his healing factor would allow his mind to survive the effects. Logan wakes up in a hotel room in Times Square and travels to Westchester to find a younger Hank McCoy and Charles Xavier, and tries to convince them his consciousness is from the future and that they need to find Mystique. Charles and Hank are unconvinced at first, but agree to try to find Mystique. Logan also recruits a valuable asset in the super-fast Peter Maximoff, who helps the trio break Erik Lehnsherr out of his underground prison beneath the Pentagon. After leaving Peter behind, Wolverine, Hank, Charles, and Erik arrive at the Paris Peace Accords and intercept Mystique, but Logan gets horrible flashbacks of his traumatic past with William Stryker, which causes his body in 2023 to violently lash out, injuring Kitty Pryde, until Magneto can restrain Wolverine. In 1973, Magneto attempts to kill Mystique in order to change the future. Hank prevents Magneto from killing her, but the confrontation turns public and the existence of mutants is revealed to the world. President Nixon approves Trask's Sentinel program, and they plan to reveal them to the world at a conference in Washington, D.C. Magneto finds the Sentinels being transported by train and secretly reprograms them, allowing him to control them later. Charles returns to the mansion and stops taking the serum Hank developed for him, allowing his telepathic powers to return, while also bringing back his paralysis. With his powers restored, Xavier reads Wolverine's mind and is able to converse with his future self, who inspires him to hope again. Xavier uses Cerebro and finds Mystique, and he, Hank, and Logan travel to Washington, D.C. to try and stop her. In D.C., Erik breaks into the Pentagon and retrieves his helmet. During the ceremony, where Nixon and Trask are present, Xavier locates Mystique in disguise in the crowd, but before they can stop her, Magneto activates the Sentinels and drops a baseball stadium around the White House, trapping Trask and Nixon and others inside. Magneto fights with Wolverine, impales him with metal, and sends him flying into the Potomac River. Nixon and Trask retreat to a White House bunker, along with a disguised Mystique. Magneto rips the entire bunker out of the building and drops it on the front lawn. In 2023, Sentinels begin attacking the monastery in China where the X-Men are holed up. Blink, Sunspot, Warpath, Bishop, Colossus, Iceman, and Storm are all killed, while Magneto is severely injured. In 1973, Beast injects himself with his power-nullifying serum, which tricks one of Magneto's Sentinels and distracts Erik long enough for Mystique to subdue him with a plastic gun. Before she can murder Trask, Charles telepathically convinces her not to, and it works, changing the public's perception of Mystique and mutants alike. She's seen as a hero who saved the president. The Sentinel program is dismantled, and Bolivar Trask is arrested for selling military secrets to foreign powers. This change completely rewrites reality, retroactively going back in time, shifting when events took place, and even when some people are born. In this new, second X-Men timeline, in ancient Egypt, a young En-Sabah-Nur displays his powers and is worshipped by a crowd as his four horsemen observe. In 3600 BC, En-Sabah-Nur is an adult undergoing a transference that would place his consciousness into a younger mutant body when he's betrayed by some of his followers, and the transference is interrupted, leaving Apocalypse in a comatose state, buried under his pyramid of advanced technology. In 1973, Major William Stryker, actually Mystique in disguise, recovers and saves Wolverine's body from the Potomac River. In 1975, 8-year-old Jean Grey, perhaps born a few years earlier than she was previously due to reality being rewritten, uses her telepathic abilities and accidentally makes her mother go unconscious while she's driving, causing a car accident that claims her life. Jean's father, John Grey, was also in the car and survives, but resents Jean for the accident, so he gives Charles Xavier full custody of his daughter. Xavier brings Jean to his school and begins helping her control her abilities. Xavier also installs mental barriers in Jean's mind that block out the trauma of the car accident. He also lies to Jean and tells her that both her parents died in the crash. In 1983, in New York, Scott Summers, the much younger brother of Alex, perhaps born a few years later than he was previously due to reality being rewritten, expels Force Blast from his eyes at school after a lesson on the world-changing events of the decade before. In Cairo, Egypt, Moira McTaggart witnesses followers of Apocalypse chanting for his awakening. When En-Sabah-Nur finally returns after centuries, he meets a young thief named Aurora Monroe and returns home with her to see the modern world on her television. Apocalypse decides the world has gone to ruin, and he and the other strongest mutants alive must take control of the planet. He plans to begin recruiting his four horsemen, starting with Aurora, boosting her mutant powers and turning her hair white as she transforms into Famine. In Poland, Erik Lehnsherr now goes by Henrik and lives a quiet life with his wife and their daughter Nina. Lehnsherr is forced to use his mutant powers at work when he saves a fellow coworker from a falling pillar. In Berlin, Germany, the now heroic Mystique investigates an underground mutant fight club and saves a young Kurt Wagner, actually her biological son, after a fight where he injures the Feathered Angel, perhaps born years earlier than he was previously due to reality being rewritten. In Poland, officers attempt to apprehend the now exposed Magneto, but Erik's mutant daughter uses her abilities to fight off the officers, causing her and her mother to be shot dead by the police. Erik, in a blind rage, murders all officers present. When Mystique takes Wagner to mutant brokers Caliban and Psylocke, Caliban tells her about Magneto. Alex Summers brings his younger brother to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters in Westchester to meet Hank McCoy and Charles Xavier, who held onto his hair a bit longer than in the previous timeline. Scott is trepidatious at first, but agrees to attend the school after meeting Charles's protege, Jean Grey. In Europe, Apocalypse and Storm recruit Psylocke as his second horseman, Pestilence. They arrive in Berlin and make Angel the third horseman, replacing his feathered wings with metallic ones, renaming him Archangel, and giving him the role of Death. In Poland, Magneto plans to murder his coworkers who exposed him when Apocalypse and his three horsemen arrive to recruit Magneto. Apocalypse himself buries the factory and the workers in it. They take Lehnsherr to the concentration camp at Auschwitz and encourage Magneto to destroy it. Magneto joins him. Apocalypse enhances his powers, and Lehnsherr becomes the fourth horseman, War. Mystique takes Kurt to Xavier's school and informs Charles about Magneto. Xavier and Alex Summers also learn more about Apocalypse from Moira McTaggart. Scott, Jean, Kurt, and Jubilation Lee go to the theater to see Return of the Jedi, while Apocalypse and his allies attack Xavier's school and kidnap Charles. Using Cerebro, Apocalypse forces world leaders to expel their nuclear arsenal into space, removing the threat of nuclear retaliation. Alex Summers is killed in an explosion at the mansion, while Peter Maximoff evacuates every student from harm. William Stryker arrives and arrests Mystique, McCoy, McTaggart, and Maximoff, believing they're responsible for the attack on the mansion, and takes them to his Weapon X facility under Alkali Lake. Scott, Jean, and Kurt avoid capture, but follow thanks to Nightcrawler's teleportation abilities. Inside the facility, Jean Grey discovers Logan, who underwent the adamantium bonding procedure years after he did in the original timeline, due to reality being rewritten. Jean frees him, and Wolverine escapes. The X-Men also escape, steal tactical suits, and head to Cairo, where Apocalypse and his horsemen are holding Charles Xavier hostage. And Sabanur orders Magneto to begin causing widespread destruction by manipulating Earth's magnetic poles. Apocalypse attacks Xavier on the astral plane, intending to possess him. The X-Men arrive and are able to convince Magneto and Storm to fight against Apocalypse. Psylocke flees, and Archangel is defeated, having Apocalypse forsake him for his weakness. Jean joins Charles on the astral plane and helps him defeat Apocalypse by tapping into the Phoenix Force. On the physical plane, Apocalypse's true form is revealed, and Jean incinerates him. Xavier loses his hair. Charles decides to train his students to be X-Men, taking on threats to humans and mutants alike. He restores Moira's memories, and they begin a relationship. Charles and Erik depart on good terms. Peter decides not to tell Erik he's his son, and he and Storm join the X-Men alongside Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Nightcrawler, and Mystique, who are given new uniforms by Xavier and begin a training session in the Danger Room against Sentinels. Representatives of the Essex Corporation retrieve data from the abandoned Weapon X facility. In 1992, the X-Men are public superheroes who are asked by the President of the United States to help rescue astronauts from the critically damaged space shuttle Endeavour. The X-Men save the shuttle's crew, but Jean Grey is momentarily outside of the X-Jet, where she absorbs a solar flare. Nightcrawler is able to recover Grey and bring her back into the jet, but her psychic abilities are greatly amplified. Back at the mansion, Grey accidentally unleashes her abilities and injures Cyclops. Jean heads to her childhood home, where she learns her father, John, is still alive, but has removed any evidence that he has ever had a daughter. The X-Men arrive, and Jean, in her grief and anger, accidentally kills Mystique. Grey also fights off police officers, leading to the public questioning whether mutants are heroes or dangerous threats to humanity. Grey leaves to find Magneto, asking him to help her kill more humans, which he refuses after Grey fights off the US military. Next, Grey encounters a woman named Vuk, who is actually the leader of a shape-shifting race of aliens called the Dabari, looking for Jean after she absorbed the solar flare. Vuk informs her that the flare is in reality a powerful cosmic force that consumed the Dabari homeworld and everything it encountered, except for Jean. Vuk plans to harness the entity to conquer Earth. Hank McCoy blames Charles Xavier for Mystique's death and travels to Magneto to inform him about her murder. Magneto and his forces decide Jean Grey is too powerful, and along with Beast, head to New York to kill her and avenge Mystique. Xavier uses Cerebro to learn of Magneto's plans and takes Cyclops, Storm, and Nightcrawler to try and intervene. Encountering the overly powerful Jean Grey, Xavier shows her a memory of John Grey, showing support and hope for his daughter, which restores Jean's original peaceful persona. The US military then arrives, capturing the mutants with power-dampening collars. Vuk attempts to siphon some of Jean's cosmic power, but is interrupted by Cyclops and escapes. While being transported by train, Charles shows some remorse for what he did to Jean. Cyclops tells Hank and Erik that Mystique wouldn't have wanted them to kill Jean either. Vuk and the Dabari arrive and overpower the soldiers on the train. The military free the X-Men, but the superheroes are still overtaken by the Dabari. Charles apologizes to Jean, and she frees herself and decides to protect her family of X-Men. Using her power, she disintegrates the Dabari while protecting the mutants on board. Seeing her power affect Scott Summers as well, and realizing the Phoenix Force is too dangerous to remain on Earth, Jean chooses to fly herself and Vuk into the atmosphere, where she seemingly kills them both. The X-Men return to Westchester, and the school is renamed the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters. Xavier retires as headmaster and gives the position to Hank. Charles moves to Paris, France, where he meets Erik, who offers to play him in a game of chess. A flaming phoenix is seen in the sky, hinting at Jean Grey's survival. At some point, Jean does indeed return. Sometime around the year 2014, in New York City, mercenary Wade Wilson, born much later in this timeline than the previous one due to reality being rewritten, meets and falls in love with prostitute Vanessa Carlyle, and they spend roughly a year together in happiness. He proposes and then passes out, soon learning he has terminal cancer. A recruiter approaches Wilson about a facility that can not only cure him, but give him superpowers, and Wilson brushes him off. Later, Wade decides he cannot let Vanessa see him slowly dying, so he leaves her and agrees to undergo the procedure. There, he meets Ajax, the sadistic head of the program, who injects Wilson with a serum meant to unlock latent mutant potential and then subjects him to torture. Wilson learns that Ajax's real name is Francis and taunts him for it, causing Ajax to force Wilson in an airtight chamber that disfigures and nearly kills him. Wade thankfully develops a powerful healing factor, but remains scarred. He escapes and fights Ajax, but stops when the villain tells him he can cure his disfigurement. Ajax burns the facility and leaves Wilson for dead. Wade survives but can't bring himself to reunite with Vanessa until his physical disfigurement is cured, so he decides to hunt down Ajax and spends the next year doing so. He takes on the name Deadpool from the Deadpool at the mercenary bar where he would receive assignments, and moves in with an elderly blind woman named Al. Deadpool slowly makes his way through associates of Ajax, upgrading his costume along the way, until he finds Francis's location in a moving convoy on an expressway. He kills Ajax's escorts and captures Francis, until he's interrupted by the X-Man Colossus, who was seemingly raised in a different part of the world in this timeline due to reality being rewritten, and the young, apathetic, negasonic teenage warhead. Colossus has been trying to recruit Deadpool to join the X-Men for a while, and still believes he has hero potential, but Wade disagrees. Ajax escapes, then Wade escapes Colossus's grasp by sawing off his own hand, which grows back later that night. Ajax then kidnaps Vanessa and tells Deadpool to meet him in a decommissioned helicarrier in a scrapyard. Deadpool convinces Colossus and Negasonic to help him, and they're driven to the scrapyard by cabbie Dopinder. In the ensuing battle, Deadpool takes on Ajax on top of the helicarrier, and Negasonic accidentally damages the craft, tipping it over. After it falls, Deadpool is about to kill Ajax when he demands to be cured. Francis reveals there is no cure, and Wade shoots him in the face. Colossus is disappointed, but Vanessa and Wade reconcile. When he witnesses a mugging on the street, Wade Wilson jumps into a nearby phone booth to change into his Deadpool uniform, but takes too long doing so, leading to the victim being shot and killed, and the mugger getting away. Deadpool yells at Stan Lee before laying down next to the victim and enjoying some of their groceries. In 2018, Deadpool is working as an international mercenary. Returning home, Wade gives Vanessa a skee-ball token from their first date, and they plan to have a baby. That night, a criminal Deadpool failed to kill earlier arrives and kills Vanessa in revenge. Wade kills the criminal in return. 6 weeks later, Wade commits suicide by blowing himself up. Then he has a vision of Vanessa in the afterlife. Wade wakes up in the X-Men's mansion after Colossus brings his body back from Wade's apartment. After just missing seeing the younger versions of the X-Men, either in a time travel adventure or somehow temporarily de-aged through unrevealed means, Deadpool agrees to join the superhero team after Colossus says something that reminds him of his vision of Vanessa. They head to an orphanage where a young mutant who can generate heat, named Russell Collins and calling himself Fire Fist, reveals the headmaster and staff physically abused him, leading to both he and Russell being arrested and fitted with power-dampening collars. The cybernetic mutant Cable arrives from the future after his family is killed and steals a truck from two friendly rednecks. Wade and Russell are sent to the Icebox prison, with Wade's power-dampening collar bringing back his cancer. The prison houses dangerous mutants, including Black Tom Cassidy and the unstoppable Juggernaut, probably raised in a different part of the world than the previous reality, and accessing a secondary mutation to make him massive. Cable breaks into the facility looking for Russell, who would grow up to murder the Time Traveler's family in the future, and Wade decides to protect the young mutant. He and Cable get thrown out of the mountain prison, and Wade has another vision of Vanessa that confirms he's doing the right thing. Deadpool recruits a team of mutants to fight Cable and protect Russell as he's being transported in a heavily armored convoy, and he calls the team X-Force, which consists of Bedlam, Shatterstar, Zeitgeist, Vanisher, Domino, and Peter, a normal but very charming human. On the mission, they all die immediately except for Domino, who has the mutant powers of incredible luck. Deadpool, Cable, and Domino all manage to infiltrate the convoy, and Cable kills Black Tom Cassidy in the melee. Russell frees the Juggernaut, and the giant mutant rips Deadpool in half. Later, as Wade is healing, Cable approaches Deadpool and agrees to work with him and his allies in stopping Russell and preventing him from killing the abusive headmaster, which may prevent him from killing Cable's family in the future. Deadpool, Cable, and Domino, along with cabbie Dopinder, all head to the orphanage to try and save Russell. Juggernaut proves too tough to beat until the X-Men Colossus, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and her mutant girlfriend Yukio arrive to help. Deadpool is able to get through to Russell, places the power-dampening collar on himself to take the headmaster's place, and even takes a bullet for him, fired by Cable. Wade dies and inspires Russell to follow a better path. Wade sees Vanessa again, but she says it's not his time yet. Cable shifts back through time to right before the fight and places the skee-ball token he took from Deadpool over his heart so that he wouldn't die from being shot. Wade survives, and Dopinder runs over the headmaster as the heroes make their exit. Later, Negasonic and Yukio repair Cable's damaged time travel device to allow for unlimited travel, and Deadpool uses it to go back and save Vanessa, Peter, and Shatterstar, and then travels to the previous reality to shoot his Weapon 11 self in the head. He also murders Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds before he can film the Green Lantern movie. During the holiday season of 2018, Deadpool kidnaps child actor Fred Savage and forces him to listen to a PG-13 retelling of the events of Deadpool 2 while trying to cash in on Princess Bride nostalgia. Possibly after being taunted by actor Fred Savage for not being a real Marvel hero, Deadpool uses Cable's technology and travels to the Sacred Timeline, Reality 616, in the year 2018, sometime before the attack from Thanos, and tries to join the Avengers. After a meeting with head of Stark Security, Harold Happy Hogan, he's left dismayed and believing he doesn't really matter. Dani Moonstar lives in a Cheyenne reservation and is awoken by her father, William Lone Star, in the middle of the night. The reservation is being attacked by an unknown entity, and Lone Star hides his daughter and is then killed. Danny is knocked unconscious and wakes up in an abandoned hospital, where she's told by Dr. Cecilia Reyes that her entire reservation has been killed, and Danny is the sole survivor. Reyes is a mutant with the power to create force fields, and tells Danny that the hospital is sheltering other teenage mutants who have all suffered tragedy. Rain Sinclair escaped her strict religious town, who branded her because she can turn into a wolf. Ilyana Rasputin, possibly the younger sister of X-Man Colossus, was a child slave who can conjure magic and travel to a dimension called Limbo. Sam Guthrie accidentally collapsed a mine on his father and co-workers due to his power to be able to shoot through the air like a cannonball. Roberto da Costa accidentally burned his girlfriend with his ability to generate intense plasma from within his body. These new mutants are learning to control their abilities, but also cannot leave the hospital. Ilyana immediately begins to bully Danny with racist insults. After Danny tries to unsuccessfully escape, she considers ending her life by jumping from a tower, but is stopped by Rain. Later, Sam and Rain begin to be separately haunted by their traumatic past. When Danny snaps back at Ilyana, the Russian teenager finds comfort in her purple dragon hand puppet named Lockheed. Eventually, the teens bond after Ilyana puts sleeping pills in Dr. Reyes' coffee, allowing the young mutants to run around unsupervised. They believe the strict supervision they're under is because they're being trained to become X-Men. Rain and Danny share romantic feelings for one another. Roberto tries flirting with Ilyana until he sees a physical manifestation of his traumatic past. Dr. Reyes is able to wake up and save Roberto in time, but places Ilyana in solitary confinement. Reyes discovers that Danny is a mutant with the ability to generate illusions based on people's subconscious fears. The illusions can have physical effects on the real world. During this discovery, Danny also learns Reyes has performed horrific experiments on other mutant children. At the same time, more of the teens are being haunted by Danny's illusions until Ilyana confronts Danny, but is stopped by Dr. Reyes. Reyes actually works for the Essex Corporation, and they order her to kill Danny. As Dr. Reyes takes Danny away, the other teens become suspicious and then have to fight off more of Danny's illusions. Rain finds Reyes and injures her, rescuing Danny, but eventually Reyes reveals that she's been training the mutants to become killers for the Essex Corporation, and that Danny is too powerful to live. As Reyes is about to murder Danny, the Demon Bear arrives and devours the doctor, destroying all the barriers around the hospital. The Demon Bear entity that had been stalking Danny and was the one that destroyed her reservation home. The New Mutants carry an unconscious Danny away, while Ilyana uses her abilities to access the Limbo dimension to retrieve a real version of the Lockheed Dragon to fight off the bear. The teens overcome their fears to fight the Demon Bear, and Danny meets her father in the spirit world, where he encourages Danny to fight the bear too. She awakens and approaches the Demon Bear to calm it down, and it dissipates. In the morning, the New Mutants head out of the hospital together. In 2023, Logan wakes up in the mansion with awareness of the previous reality, as well as the actions in 1973 that changed reality. His consciousness has finally returned. He sees Scott Summers and Jean Grey, as well as Storm and Beast, are all alive and thriving as teachers in the school. When he asks Professor X for an explanation for what happened in the past 50 years, Charles realizes which Wolverine he's speaking with and welcomes him back. At some point after this, the anchor being of this reality, Wolverine, dies, possibly in a similar way to what we see in the movie Logan. The Wolverine of reality 10,005, as designated by Deadpool and Wolverine, dying begins the very slow process of unraveling the reality forever. The third X-Men timeline begins in an alternate reality, branched off from events in the year 2004, where no New Mutants would be born. In the year 2029, Logan is working as a limo driver in Texas, and along with mutant tracker Caliban, takes care of a senile 97-year-old Charles Xavier in a compound south of the border. Sometime prior, Charles accidentally killed several X-Men from psychic feedback when he suffered a seizure. Logan's healing factor has been deteriorating for some time. He's approached by a Mexican woman named Gabriela Lopez, who asks for his help transporting herself and an 11-year-old girl named Laura to a place called Eden in North Dakota. When Logan arrives to pick them up, Gabriela has been murdered, and Logan takes the girl back to his home. After returning, Logan, Charles, and Laura flee from a man named Donald Pierce, who has been hunting Laura down, to return her to the facility she and Gabriela escaped from. Caliban is captured and forced to use his mutant ability to track Logan down. Logan and Charles learn Laura is technically Logan's daughter, as she was an experiment called X-23 that used Wolverine's DNA to try and create the perfect weapon. After the lab created another project, X-24, the children were supposed to be killed, which is why Gabriela helped them escape, and brought Laura across the border to Texas. In Oklahoma City, Logan learns that Eden is actually a fictional place in an old X-Men comic book that apparently recounted real adventures the X-Men went on, only with vastly different details. Pierce's group of mercenaries, called the Reavers, find Logan and Charles, but Xavier experiences another seizure and nearly kills everyone in the vicinity. Logan is able to give Charles a suppressant, and they escape. On the road, the group almost get into an accident and help a farming family recover their horses when Charles uses his psychic ability to calm them down. The family invites Logan, Charles, and Laura over for dinner, and they accept. That night, X-24, a mindless clone of Wolverine in his prime, attacks and kills the family as well as Charles Xavier. The clone captures Laura, but Caliban sacrifices himself with 2 grenades to destroy the Reaver's van and allows Logan and Laura to escape. Logan apologized to Charles before he passed and took his body to bury it elsewhere. An exhausted Logan passes out and wakes up at a doctor's office that Laura brought him to. Then she demands he take her to Eden. When they arrive at the coordinates, Logan realizes Eden is a safe haven meeting spot for the escaped mutant children and that they're planning to trek across the border into Canada. The Reavers learn about Eden's location and arrive to capture the children. One of the young mutants, Richter, gives Logan a serum that would temporarily bring him back to his physical prime, and he takes it after the children are captured by the Reavers. Scientist Xander Rice's father worked on the Weapon X program and was killed by Logan, and now Rice is the head of the project that experimented on these young mutants. After killing many Reavers, the serum wears off and Logan meets Rice. Wolverine is able to kill Xander Rice, but is overpowered by the X-24 clone. The clone is killed by Laura, using Logan's one remaining adamantium bullet that he had been holding onto in case he wanted to commit suicide. Logan is so injured from the fight with X-24 and being impaled by a tree, as well as his weakening healing factor, he actually begins to die, holding his daughter Laura's hand. She calls him Daddy, and he passes away. The children bury Wolverine and head out for the Canadian border. Laura briefly returns to place Logan's cross on its side, marking him as an X-Man to the end. Going back to reality 10,005, 6 years after being rejected to join the Avengers, Deadpool is now working as a used car salesman with Peter, and he and Vanessa have been broken up for a while. During Wade's birthday party with friends, the Time Variance Authority arrive at his door and take Deadpool to the TVA offices. There, he meets Mr. Paradox, who offers to bring Deadpool into the sacred timeline, where he will actually matter, which Wade is ecstatic about until he learns that the rest of his reality, including his friends and Vanessa, will die, as their reality 10,005 is being sped up to be destroyed by a device called a Time Ripper. When Deadpool learns his reality is dying because their anchor being, Wolverine, died protecting X-23 at some point in the future, perhaps many years past 2029, Wade resolves to find Wolverine to repair it. He steals a TemPad and goes to the point in his timeline where Wolverine is buried, realizing he is actually dead. He then resolves to find a Wolverine variant from another reality and travels to various universes and encounters a Patch variant, an older Logan variant, a Hulk fighting variant, a wild variant living in an age of apocalypse, a variant who looks remarkably like actor Henry Cavill, a crucified variant, and a comic-accurate short height variant, until he meets a broken Wolverine variant in a bar wearing an X-Man costume underneath his clothes. Wade brings the passed-out Wolverine to the TVA, but learns this Wolverine let his reality's X-Men die by doing nothing as they were killed. Deadpool and Wolverine are then pruned and sent to the Void, which exists at the end of all time and houses cast-off heroes and villains from various realities in the multiverse. They meet a member of the Resistance, Johnny Storm, who Deadpool believes to be Steve Rogers. And after Logan kills his brother Sabretooth, they're all three captured by scavengers that include Pyro, Toad, and more. They're brought to the giant Ant-Man corpse base of Cassandra Nova, a variant twin sister of Charles Xavier and an extremely powerful telepath. Deadpool accuses the Human Torch of insulting Nova, so she kills the Fantastic Four member with her powers, skinning him alive. Deadpool and Wolverine barely hold their own against Cassandra and manage to escape before Alioth attacks and consumes some of Nova's forces. Wade and Logan regroup and meet some Deadpool variants, Dogpool and Nicepool, who give them a car to try and find the resistance of surviving heroes in the Void. After Logan learns that Deadpool doesn't actually know if Paradox can repair Logan's broken reality, they fight until they pass out. Later, they're brought to the Resistance hideout by Laura, who's from the third X-Men timeline, where Logan also saved her life before dying. The Resistance is made up of Elektra, Blade, Gambit, and Laura, all from realities being discarded by the TVA in favor of keeping the sacred timeline secure. After Laura inspires Wolverine to join the fight, the Resistance heads to Cassandra Nova the next morning. They arrive and fight Nova's forces, including Juggernaut from the previous reality, and eventually overpower Nova using Juggernaut's helmet, neutralizing her powers. Pyro arrives and shoots the depowered Cassandra on the orders of Mr. Paradox, whom Pyro made a deal with, until Wolverine convinces Deadpool to remove the helmet so Nova could heal herself, citing that Charles Xavier wouldn't want them to murder her. Nova is freed, and she uses a sling ring to allow Deadpool and Wolverine to escape back to reality 10,005. Nova then kills Pyro and follows the mutant adventurers. In Deadpool's reality, Paradox and the TVA are setting up the Time Ripper machine to destroy that reality. Cassandra Nova arrives and captures Paradox, intending to turn the entire multiverse into the Void, where she can rule all. Nova sends the interdimensional Deadpool core after Deadpool and Wolverine to stop them from stopping her. Logan and Wade fight through the core. Nicepool is killed, and Peter arrives, and everyone stops to praise him. Deadpool and Wolverine make it to Paradox, who tells them the machine can't be stopped unless it's short-circuited underground. At first, Wolverine volunteers to sacrifice himself between the chambers of matter and antimatter, saving Deadpool's reality, but Wade tricks him and goes to short-circuit the machine himself. Wolverine breaks in and they both destroy the machine, kill Cassandra Nova, and manage to survive. B-15 arrives and arrests Paradox after flirting with Peter. Deadpool asks the TVA to help the Resistance in the Void and to repair Wolverine's broken reality, but B-15 says nothing can be done about what occurred in Logan's universe. Wade brings Logan and Dogpool to his apartment to meet Al and invites his friends and Laura over. Vanessa and Wade rekindle their relationship. Later, Deadpool uses the TVA to prove Johnny Storm did in fact insult Cassandra Nova. And that's the complete timeline of all 3 X-Men timelines. Tell us, do we miss any important details? What's your favorite moment in the X-Men movie franchise? Will we see Deadpool and Wolverine again? Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye.